Okay, the last Starfighter 4K version versus the standard Blu-ray version. I have the standard Blu-ray version, so it's always a question I guess people ask. They ask me anyway. Are certain things worth upgrading from the Blu-ray to the 4K? And sometimes it does depend on what you look for. For the most part, for me, it's always an upgrade. There's really never a world where, even if I have the Blu-ray, where I would not advise going for a 4K upgrade unless they've done something significantly wrong with the transfer. So yeah, I would always advise that. Now there are a couple of things to consider here as well with the 4K version. Is depending on whether you have Dolby Vision or whether you don't. The Dolby Vision version, settings on your display cannot be changed in any way, like black level detail or anything like that. You can't actually change that. It just comes through as Dolby Vision. There's no settings on your player you can change. The TV, you could raise the black level, but then you destroy like the black floor on an OLED at least, so you can't do anything like that. So I did notice that there are some scenes where on my LG C9, which is fully calibrated by the way, tends to crush some of the detail in some of those early scenes where he's in his bedroom just thinking, I can't go out with my friends, things like that. And I thought the HDR version actually looked better. And one of the reasons why is because I can control black level detail in the HDR version, and I can't do that in Dolby Vision. So there is things to consider like that. Past that, I thought grain potentially looked slightly better as well in HDR than Dolby Vision, and this is display related. If I had a display that was capable of not completely, say, crushing blacks or having any issues with blacks, then chances are everything would then look better. So I've seen a lot of people getting into this debate lately about HDR, turning Dolby Vision off and then putting HDR on. In some cases, it potentially could be worth doing, especially with film content. And the reason I say that is because anything with grain, I feel as though it benefits less from Dolby Vision anyway. It's only when it's completely grainless, Dolby Vision really, really, really does look better, which is rare on any of the movies that I watch, apart from maybe some animations. So, definitely things to consider. So yeah. Let's look at some screenshots I took. We should see the 4K first, then the Blu-ray, then the 4K. We should go in that sequence all of the time. I made sure I got the same frames. I think there was one, there was a shot down here that wasn't the same frame. I could not get it onto the same frame. I don't know why. That was just this scene. I don't know whether they skipped a frame on the Blu-ray, but I could not get the same frame. It's the same shot though, so we can really still see what's going on. Let's go full screen. And yeah, so this the first shot here is the 4K, and then we go into the Blu-ray, and let's hope YouTube allows people to really see the differences between these shots. Some of the later on shots you definitely will. So I'm just going backwards and forwards between the shots. That's the 4K, that's the Blu-ray, that's the 4K, that's the Blu-ray. So some of the differences that I can note in this screenshot specifically is black level detail here. Then we switch to this. This is the Blu-ray, and it gets washed out. And this tends to be an issue with Blu-ray. It's probably gamma tracking, but all Blu-rays I see track gamma too high, meaning that the black levels are pushed up in SDR. And with HDR, look, we gain all this black level detail here. What this does, what this does, is it washes out the image. If you raise the black levels, you lose dynamics. And I'm talking about dynamics is like when I increase the black level detail on my player using HDR10 on the Panasonic UB9000. In some cases, you potentially could be losing dynamics, but you've already lost dynamics because you're crushing blacks anyway. So, you know, there is a fine balance to this. But with SDR here, you know, this is obvious that we are just creating more. We have more dynamics at play here, you know, and this was shot when we didn't think about HDR. You know, we didn't know about HDR back then. So what some of these cameras are picking up is potentially significant, to the point where even the Blu-ray standard, which is very, very good, I would consider it very, very good picture quality, for the most part anyway, and acceptable for most people. And we lose this. It's not able to track black and black level detail as it should. Another thing is these flowers here. The red just pops in HDR more, and all of the colors do. It just pops more. This basket here, because of this fine black level detail that we have here, it applies everywhere in the image. As soon as you go here, this fine edging here, you lose it because you get this washed out black level detail on SDR. Now, to some people this might be small, and it is. It's small, you know. You can watch the Blu-ray, and look, the Blu-ray looks good. It's just it's the finishing touch having the HDR version. So that's just how I feel. Now, I think what I'm going to do actually is move my camera here, because I want you to see this corner. Where are we? Okay, so yeah, this is another example of SDR. So there's more black level detail in this corner, right? And the HDR version tracks black exactly as black should look. But in the Blu-ray version and the SDR version, actually that shouldn't be fair. It's not the fact that it's SDR, it's more the fact that it's 8-bit. That is really, really the problem. But it's filling in all of this. But that means the black level is raised, and there's no definition. You lose definition here. Even here, you're actually losing definition. You're not gaining it by raising blacks in SDR or in the Blu-ray version. So same here. The actual black color is changing. This is a deeper black. It's richer. This red here, we're actually washing out. This is the Blu-ray. That's the 4K. Slightly different frame actually here again, and the timing was the same. Doesn't matter. But again, we have more richness in HDR. The colors are more vibrant. It's not the brightest color movie. I would consider it a natural looking movie. But the way the colors track versus the Blu-ray version to the 4K is, in my opinion, significant. It just adds much more depth there. Now, I guess I can put it back on the other side now. Okay. Yeah. The colors again. you should already know what the 4K is and what the Blu-ray is. The Blu-ray here is washing out all of this color because you lose dynamics in 100 nit content. You lose dynamics in 100 nits, which is SDR, which is Blu-ray. You just don't have that dynamic range. It's squashed. Along with having increased black levels, look at that. You have pop in the HDR, complete pop, and looking at one versus the other here, it's significant. To me, this is again, Jimmy down the road could be watching his movie, the Blu-ray, and he's happy with it. He might be like, look, this is really as good as it's going to look in my eyes. Having HDR, what's it really going to do? Well, it's going to give you a lot more pop, and it makes colors track naturally to the film itself. Where this Blu-ray here, look at this as well. The black here, what it actually is tracking black. And again, we're raising blacks on the Blu-ray. That red, there's a red color here. It just cannot do that on Blu-ray. It's impossible. So look at his shirt. Look at his t-shirt here. That difference in red is completely significant. And that really, small differences. You could say large. We just have more dynamic range here at play. That is the biggest selling point here. The thing is with HDR, we can create 1,000 nit containers and things like that. You don't really need that many nits to get this type of improvement. I haven't looked, honestly, but I think you could get this with 400 to 500 nits or less. This dynamic punch that you get in the 4K. You don't need 1,000 nits. My LG, none of the OLEDs can display full screen 1,000 nits anyway, so we don't really know what that looks like. But if you can inspect some of the discs on 4K Blu-ray, and they give you, what the average nit count is and things like that. A lot of these movies don't actually go that high in nits. So what is creating this difference? Even if you increase the nits by 100, 200, and having 10-bit color. 10-bit color is huge for allowing these colors to track properly. Because I've seen some SDR movies on 4K, and to me they look absolutely perfect. So some of this really is to do with just having 10-bit color, because the SDR was not an issue. Some of the Kino releases I've seen, they're not an issue whatsoever in SDR. They have this look. You could switch between one and the other like this, and you still retain that punch, and even at 100 nits. So, very interesting. Again, the Blu-ray just looks flat, whereas the 4K, there's just more dynamics here. And again, we are raising black level detail here. You're seeing more noise in the image, or film grain. You can see this all here. Raising black level detail destroys dynamics. Right, we have raised blacks here, and we have less color or brightness in the image as well. So you've raised one end and you've cut the other end off, and it doesn't particularly look that great. I just find this really interesting. So now one thing I will say about grain. Let's talk about the actual grain here for a second. And on the 4K, the grain to me does look tighter, and if anything, less noisy. But I will say, I think the Blu-ray is pulling out about as much film grain detail as possible, because the codec that's used on Blu-ray, X264, is actually very good at handling film grain. It really is. Once you have enough bitrate, that is. Once you have enough bitrate with that codec, it really does allow grain to look very fine, tracks well, and everything like that. On the 4K, if anything, some people are actually going to like this. The grain is slightly softer, and the grain chunks, you could say, are smaller. So, because I was looking at one and the other, and I was like, well, I kind of actually do like the grain structure on the Blu-ray. Again, the 4K looks slightly smoother, and the reason that is, it's actually to do with the codec itself. Because I like grain so much, I've been playing around with the codec, just some free software like VidCoder, Handbrake, and things like that. Because I'm such a grain fanatic, I've realized that the codec does have issues trying to track ultra fine detail like grain and things like that. So I went out of my way in for my encodes and what I do to pull as much fine detail and grain out in the codec as possible. That was my goal, and I think I achieved it. So, I've got some trailers up on the archive and things like that people can go and check out. I've encoded some Netflix stuff, Sol Levante, I think that's listed up on there. And the goal on that, again, was just to pull out as much fine detail as possible, because X265 on 4K is a soft codec, and you have to optimize so much to get even more detail out of this. So could Arrow be could they optimize potentially even more? Maybe they maybe could. I don't know how much they optimize for each individual title. I've found you actually don't need to do that. Once you've found out how to deal with film grain, you don't need to do that. You don't need to optimize actually for every single movie. At least I don't think you do. And the reason I say that is because I just encode trailers and things like that for fun, and I always get the same results. So in quality, like I always get the highest results with the settings I'm using, and grain tracks absolutely incredible, and it's ultra fine. So there might be some things that they could do here. There's some things that I know they probably wouldn't want to do, like lower D block. D block is a setting that is used in an encoder, and it does exactly what it says. D block, it stops blocking happening. When you don't have enough bitrate in video, especially back in the old days, if you remember, like even now, streaming, things like that, especially if you're playing them on a big screen, you can literally see blocks. You can see blocks, macro blocking, that type of stuff, and you really get this from low bitrate. And I've learned that the higher the bitrate, the less reliance you need on D block. D block softens film grain, right? It smudges film grain. If you're using bleeding edge bit rates on 4K, like I tend to do, I always set my bit rates, or at least try and track my bit rates, to 98 megabits per second. When you do that, for me, it negates the need for this D block, and it allows more fine level detail, because you're not smudging any potential blocks or noise that the encoder thinks that it needs to be smudged and blocked out. So that really is the differences between the 4K and the Blu-ray. Blu-ray does track grain really nicely, but most people will like that smoother look that the 4K has. In the end, the 4K does look better. The Blu-ray does, in my opinion, probably look too grainy, and it is more noisier. And again, this is really from going from codec to codec. So, but if you look at like screenshots like this, there are certain things that I am willing to accept. If I had more, it's a good word here. The grain is more consistent on the Blu-ray. Sorry, the 4K, not the Blu-ray. The 4K is more consistent in its grain, 100%. Whereas the grain tends to be wild. It is wild on the Blu-ray, like it, you know. So, and again, this is really just the difference between encoding with one X264 versus X265. So, interesting. Yeah, another shot. I just couldn't get the same frame. Now, so one of the biggest things for me is the colors around his face here, right? They're non-existent on the Blu-ray. This red, this is it a red? It's a form of red. Just much more definition on his face. It really is. It's significant. I think it looks excellent. Much better black level detail, and if you actually see here, there's lots of noise in the background here, film grain. But we're really above. We're really pushing above black here, right? When you go to the 4K, black is now tracking more to me. It is slightly there on my screen, at least. I don't know what you can see on YouTube, because, you know, it's not exact, is it, on YouTube? But we have more filmic black here. Instead of this raised black, washed out look. Same with his face. Again, we've got more punch from the light coming in. This is just another thing I see. Again, this red here. It's impossible on Blu-ray. Completely impossible, these colors. And again, this washed out look is just not good for me. Not good at all. I mean, here, look at this. Look at the difference. This is the 4K. That is the Blu-ray. And again, the Blu-ray, we're washing everything out. Now, if you actually look at grain structure, they're actually equal. To me, that looks, and you can see here, they really are about equal. So the X264 version, even though I said, hey, you know, some of the shots I actually do like the grain in there, it might be artificial. The encoder might be just grabbing too much, just overburdening us with the grain and that detail, and it is not accurate. You know, the 4K might be exactly how it is, which is much more subdued, controlled, and consistent film grain. But yeah, the difference here. Well, here's that color again. It's like a smooth. We have redness. You know, there is redness. There's other colors at play in this shot. The lights. The lights have more punch to them. If you were around this area at the time, the HDR tracks the colors more like you would see them with your own eyes. Things are not washed out like this in real life. You know, they're just not. So the HDR version really does a fabulous job at retaining the look of the original film, and that is the beauty of this format. Is it big? I think it would only be big when you see them, say, side by side, right? That because when you're on the screen and you're in the movie and you get your eyes adjust to the color palette of the movie, you can't imagine that the difference would be this high. So you'd only see this difference really as if you did a back-to-back. And I have two 4K players, so I went from one input to the next. You could see this pop. And this is why, again, for the most part, I would always say that the 4K is always worth it. One thing I'll say though on top of that is this is a transfer from Arrow. And some other companies may not be able to get the work as good as Arrow. So there is that to say. For me, Arrow, as long as they have the disk space and they're allowed to use that much bitrate, they do some of the best transfers on the format. But again, if they're allowed to do it, how much the people at Arrow, how much disk space are we assigning? Can we use a 100 gig disk all of the time? That really comes down to it. So for me, if it was my company, and I would love to do this, but it's a 100 gig disk all of the time, right? I don't care how long the movie is. Then you fill in then if you want to put all of the extras on, if the movie was an hour and a half, right, 90 minutes, I would go balls to the wall on bitrate and the best encoding settings that I know, absolutely maxed out. Like, I would max the movie out. It could not look better, right? Then whatever space I have left on that 4K, I would put all of the extras on, and the extras will be optimized. You can run extras at 20 megabits a second, 15, right? You're not making that content look pretty. It's there just for supplemental material, with the knowledge that everything went into the video on the movie itself. Now, sure, if you really had the space and there was an hour's worth of extras as well, maybe even 2 hours, I don't know how high you could go. But again, that content, I don't think people expect the content to look incredible. We want the movie to look its best. Now, if you're using a 66 gig disk and in any way you held back on that bitrate, even by 10 megabits per second, for me, I don't want that, right? That's not who I am. Somebody might tell me, because I've been having this discussion on forums and things like that, and that is, well, I could achieve basically very similar results as you, but using 10 megabits per second lower. I don't care. I do not care about that. The only thing I care about is the quality of the transfer to the 4K format, what available bitrate we have to use, and everything is maxed out all of the time. Going off at the tangent here about bitrates, but that's how I feel. If you use a 66 gig disk, then you really need to make sure everything is you're maxing everything out, and the movie could just fit on that disk. You've got everything in, nothing was held back. Sure, then we put the extras on a Blu-ray disc. That's fine. You can do that too. Is that more expensive though? You're now using one 4K disc and then a Blu-ray? Is that more expensive than just one 4K disc? I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe it is. But so again, we've just got more pop on the 4K. That's the 4K. That's the Blu-ray. We're washed out again. Black level detail here. We're pulling in more black level detail. And again, we're just washing everything out in Blu-ray. This is just a common occurrence, what is happening here. Again, it just looks more believable. The colors are more believable in HDR. Again, we get this washed out look. We're losing the brightness. We're losing that those highlights, the lights that are coming in to light all the actors' faces, things like that, and however this may be lit. But you lose that. This pop here, you really just lose that. The red here, it's a different color. Blu-ray just, again, it cannot track colors properly. If Blu-ray could track colors properly, it had 10-bit color, it had a lot more colors to choose from. Blacks were also perfect. The difference would be now, in my opinion, much smaller. But because it cannot do that, I'm just always going to favor the 4K. I don't know if you've ever watched movies, digital movies by like Lionsgate. They've been shot digital. The encode is like 30 megabits a second, 28 megabits a second. It's not the highest. And I'm watching some of the content like that, just this easy filmed stuff, I would call it, just easy stuff. And I'm watching it, and I talked to my brother about this as well. I'm like, the colors just look bad. Like it needs HDR just to allow the colors to breathe. I can just tell some of the oranges, some of the blues in some of these other movies that I watch that are just on Blu-ray. They just don't track right. This is this. So not too much difference here, but that's the 4K. Just slightly less dynamics. There's more power and punch in the HDR, but again, this is actually very small. But yeah, so that's it. I only wanted to take a few screenshots there. I know I've been talking a lot about it. I thought it was better for me to maybe take less screenshots, get more focused on what I really want to talk about, things like that. And yeah, so should you upgrade from the last Starfighter Blu-ray to the 4K? Well, for me, if you know me, you've seen my reviews, you've seen my videos, 100% yes. Because grain tracks, grain is more consistent. It isn't even though I did like the Blu-ray, it isn't just noisy mess, right? It's more controlled. There is more dynamics at play in the HDR version. It really does make a difference. Now, black level detail again, though. If I guess any OLED, right? If you are having any issues with black level detail and you think this scene just looks too dark, you might want to turn Dolby Vision off, put HDR on, and use some tricks that the UB9000 has. If you have a Panasonic UB9000 or a Panasonic 820, for me, they're the best players on the market. You can do so much with them. They really bring so much more to HDR and 4K content. It's unbelievable. It really is. So yeah. I initially went into this thinking, the differences might be small. I really thought that, I thought the Blu-ray looked very good. It was done well. This is Arrow. They do good transfers on Blu-ray and 4K. But to me, this is a must upgrade. It really is. It is for people like me and anyone else out there that wants the version of the movie that represents the film in the highest possible quality. Bang, and now it's in my collection. You know, it's really, I'm finished now. You know, all of the different versions of the last Starfighter, right? VHS, Laserdisc, I don't know if there were DVDs, Blu-rays, 4K. To me, the 4K represents the film in the exact way that it should look, right? It really does. I think they've done an excellent job. Now, from just a picture quality point of view, because I haven't talked about the actual picture quality, this is all transfer stuff, and this is all how things look compared to this format and that format. The movie itself, really, it doesn't look. I'm going to say amazing. If I well, I'm kind of reviewing it here, right? I would only review it around 4.25 to around a 4.5 out of 5. And the reason is because compared to just things I've been watching lately, it just looks well, it looks as it's supposed to. When was the movie made? 1984. It looks like a low budget, to me, low budget 1984 movie. That's exactly what it looks like. Now, on one side, you could say, well, then it's a perfect transfer, right? And for the most part, I think it's an excellent transfer, right? But compared to certain other movies, it just doesn't have, say, the resolution, as much HDR dynamics as other movies, and you kind of have to think. I'm not saying that the jump from Blu-ray to the 4K is not big, because we've seen, you know, with the colors and things like that, that it actually is. And this is the version to own. I'm just saying, what would my thoughts be on the actual score compared to, say, other movies? I think it's if I was being generous, I would give it a 4.5 out of 5. But if I was being ultra picky, maybe 4.25, and even that might be a bit too picky. So, but it's around there compared to other discs. If I just reviewed based on its transfer quality, it's 4.5, right? Potentially even higher, but it's around 4.5. So if you want to look at it that way, you can. Compared to some other things, it might be slightly different. So yeah, there's not many times where the HDR should just not look better. There's a few other titles that maybe actually like to do this with, but the reason I don't do it a lot is because, again, I watch a 4K and I know I'm owning the best version of a movie. This really proves that. You know, how many more times can somebody say, well, the picture looks washed out on Blu-ray and it doesn't have the dynamic range of a HDR? Well, that's what Blu-ray is, you know, raised black levels and colors that can't track correctly. So yeah, just wanted to do a different video today. Did just a little bit different approach. Didn't actually review this, but like I said, probably around the 4.5 out of 5. Good transfer. I'm not saying it's a gigantic upgrade from the Blu-ray, because the Blu-ray was a good transfer anyway. HDR is the biggest thing that really changes this movie. With more dynamics, more colors and flesh tones and things like that, really does make this movie look much better. So yeah, maybe my next video, I don't think I'm going to do a review. Got some other things I'm thinking about doing. The Spears and Munsell stuff, I would like to look at the sound, setting up Dolby Atmos and things like that. So I enjoy trying to do somewhat different things, like if I can, and like this video is just a different approach, and I thought, yeah, maybe I'll try this. but just the basics on setting up Dolby Atmos. What are the best ways to do it? Are there any tricks, or are there any tips? Microphones and things like that, and setting things up. So yeah, just some things I've been thinking about. And one time I'd actually like to do a video on actually calibrating my speakers with REW here. Actually calibrating the speakers. Now I have Windows 11 here, and I don't think the last time I tried calibrating the speakers with REW on Windows 11, and I couldn't get the sound to come out correctly using I forget another app, but so you can get sound essentially in bitstream. So you can choose the right speaker, the left speaker, the middle, the surround. So you can actually calibrate it with the speakers in mind. But with Windows 11, I couldn't do that. So I may have to go back to my old PC, which is Windows 10. EQ everything, save all of my measurements, and then I just make a video explaining how the process went. So that's just some things as well I've been thinking about doing for videos. But yeah, really appreciate everybody watching. If you're still watching, good job, thank you, really appreciate that. So yeah, thanks for watching, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.